1531, when explorer Jacques Cartier was turned back by rapids in his quest for the Northwest Passage along the St. Lawrence River, men have dreamed of a waterway connecting the Atlantic and the Great Lakes. But since 1959, the St. Lawrence Seaway has answered that dream. Built at a cost of $1 billion and operated jointly by the United States and Canada, the Seaway carries over 50 million tons of cargo annually, including iron ore moving to the west and grain to the east. Each vessel navigating this engineering triumph passes the historic city of Montreal on the way to its eventual destination. But today our concern will be with engineering triumphs which are much smaller in nature, but which achieve their destination much more quickly, as we travel northeast of Montreal to Sanair International Drag Strip for the 7th stop of the NHRA Winston Championship Drag Racing Series. Hello, I'm Paul Page. And you know, last year at Montreal, the driver of this funny car, John Force, scored his first Nationals victory, breaking a string of 11 runner-up finishes. The question being asked is this his lucky track? Is there the possibility that he will score another victory here today? Well, we'll definitely be following that story. But as with any NHRA drag racing event, there is plenty going on here. And to bring us up to speed on the other activity, let's go to my colleague, Steve Evans.
Paul, the big story as far as Top Fuel is concerned is, of course, young Floridian Darrell Gwynn. He has a chance to make history. He could be the first driver ever in Top Fuel to win 4 consecutive NHRA championships. It's never happened in Winston Drag Racing Series history. One driver who will not get a shot at Darrell, who would have had he won in the first round earlier today, is Joe Amato. Amato had big-time engine problems. That allowed Jack Ostrander to go to the second round. It also cost Joe the Winston Point Series lead. There we see one of the problems that may have cost Joe Amato that victory in the first round. And Joe, as good a sport as you are, to lose in the first round when you're chasing points is enough to put a frown on any man's face.
Yeah, it's very disappointing, Steve. The car has been running good all weekend, and, you know, we were ahead, and something happened to make the car go real lean. And you know, might have lost a fuel pump or something went wrong. It was a mechanical bug.
So losing the belt could be a result of some other things.
Oh, yeah, the motor went bad. It pushed the head gaskets out, and something made the car go real lean, and it blew it up.
I'm sure you guys will find it.
Yeah, but it's, you know, now we lost the points lead, so now it's going to, but, you know, we'll have to work a little harder, that's all.
A lot more racing left.
Yeah.
Another powerhouse with problems in round number 1. Frank Bradley suffered some very expensive and some fiery engine damage. When we talk, well, keep Frank away from sharp objects for a while. Well, one of the toughest cars and drivers in the nation in Top Fuel, Frank Bradley, is out in fiery fashion in round number 1. What happened, Frank?
Same thing as yesterday. Changed the fuel system around a little bit and blew the crank out of it yesterday and kicked a rod out of it today.
What they call hydraulicking, where you get so much fuel you can't compress fuel or water, you can only compress air.
Nitro makes a big explosion, and that's what's happening.
And it's an expensive explosion.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we're going to probably go back to California and retire after this deal.
Being number 1 qualifier in pro stock as Warren Johnson was, didn't mean a thing in round number 1. Not if you can't keep the car straight. And Johnson's Oldsmobile was all over the racetrack, allowing Mark Howitt to get to the finish line first. Bob Glidden, who won the last race on the circuit, the Spring Nationals, he had the same kind of handling problems in his Thunderbird. He was defeated by Tony Christian.
The track was a little bit loose, and I simply was in the wrong groove. And Tony, you know, he didn't let up or anything. He kept coming down the track, and it's our day to lose again, I guess.
There have been 6 NHRA Winston Drag Racing Series events this season, and 6 different funny car winners. And there's 2 drivers after first round action this morning that won't have a chance to repeat. First, it was Ed McCullough, who was defeated by Johnny West, and then a real shocker, 3-time and current Winston champ Kenny Bernstein red-lighted. He left the starting line too soon, automatic disqualification. Kenny couldn't believe it himself. Well, this is a man much more accustomed to wind lights than red lights. I can't remember the last time it happened, Kenny.
Well, it's been a while, but those things happen, and you know, it's concentration up there, Steve, and I just lost some concentration, and my foot left and went, and my brain said, why'd you do that? And it was over with and done. That's about what happens.
Well, bad and good come out of Bernstein's red light. Bad for Kenny. He loses the Winston Series points lead. Good for the fans because it really tightens up the pack. Now, as far as John Force, as you said, he won here a year ago. The fans really like him. He's the low qualifier at 5.44 seconds. He has got a shot at being the first repeat winning driver of the season. What about it? You got John Force fans? I tell you, John is big north of the border. Let's go to my friend Big Daddy Don Garlitz to tell us about what we can expect in round number 2 coming up.
Thanks, Steve. As we go into the second round, our standout performer today is Gene Snow with that high gear car. He's just performing flawlessly, and I just don't think the other cars are going to be able to handle him. Now, in funny car, we've got a whole new deal shaping up. Don Perdome is running the best that he's run. He had low ET in the first round at a 550. But now we've got John Force on the other side there, which knows how to handle this track. You know, he was the winner here last year, so I kind of feel like Force and Perdome are the two cars to watch. Pro Stock, I mean, you talk about upsets, that was the one. Johnson, low ET, Glidden, the second qualifying car, both out in the first round. It just kind of leaves the battle there to old Butch Leo. You know how he leaves, so he's going to be tough. His ET is good enough, he could be the winner. But, of course, Morris Johnson Jr., low ET in the first round, he also leaves good. That would make one heck of a final, let me tell you.
Okay, thanks, Big Daddy. It is time for round 2 of Top Fuel Dragster Eliminations. That is Darrell Gwynn, the young man with a chance to make history, to win 4 races in a row on the NHRA trail. And as we look at Darrell Gwynn's Top Fueler, we're seeing just about the best that Craftsman can create in this sport. There are 300 inches in wheelbase, 300 inches being the NHRA maximum. A 500 cubic inch nitro-burning motor that makes about 4,000 horsepower. And here is his opponent. This is Jack Ostrander from Pontiac, Michigan. And Big Daddy, Ostrander is dangerous because he never beats himself. He doesn't qualify particularly well, but he doesn't go out and blow things up either.
And remember, he just beat Amato in the first round, so he's high right now. And he's not worried about Glenn. He's just worried about getting that car down his lane and doing it right. So Gwen better not make a mistake.
Okay, let's rate this racetrack.
Oh, this racetrack is terrific. That 511 that Hill qualified with rates it right up there with tracks like Gainesville. You know, it could be 7, 8, or 9 on the rating.
But you can tell by the short sleeves of the grandstands, the fans are enjoying the weather. It's good for performance as well.
That's right. We have a real excellent air here. The cars can make horsepower. Hill ran 278 miles an hour. That tells you power is available.
Ostrander drag races strictly for the fun of it. Darrell Gwynn, on the other hand, is a full-time professional. Earlier, I asked him about the pressure of trying to win 4 in a row. Darrell, you've got a shot at history today. Your thoughts?
Well, 4 in a row obviously would make us all very happy. 4 in a row also is something that's very unheard of. I know it'll be the first time it would ever be done in the sport of Top Fuel racing, but we're taking it one round at a time, and winning the World Championship is going to come from being in the late rounds every time. It's not necessarily winning every race. We want to win, obviously, every race we go to, but we know that's not feasible, and being in the late rounds is what it's all about, and that's what we're looking for, is the late round charge in the middle of the summer right now.
Well, Darrell didn't say it, but he's got to be a bit concerned with his performance so far because he qualified only number 6, and that's not a high position for that particular car. His best one of the event has been a 5:27. And Ostrander knows that Darrell is maybe a little off today. He might be looking for a good light, Big.
Yes, he is. Ostrander does lead real good. Notice both cars are staging. They're very calm. This is a critical time in racing.
And it's Darrell Gwynn off the mark first. Darrell Gwynn with a car length advantage, and he carries that across the finish line. Darrell Gwynn will go to the semis, 5:31, 263 miles per hour to Ostrander's 5:49. A very game effort, but no horsepower on the far end of the racetrack, only 224 miles an hour. In the replay, watch the car in the far lane. You can see Darrell Gwynn react first to that yellow light. You leave on yellow. If you wait to see green on the Christmas tree, you're late already. Gwynn has the horsepower in the middle of the racetrack. Ostrander knows right now that he's got problems.
Anytime you're sitting in one of these cars and you can see the other car completely out in front of you, know you got trouble, and that's just what Ostrander had. Back in Jerry Caminito's pit area, they've started the engine. This has become a common practice after they've rebuilt the engine. The crew wants to know if the thing is going to run correctly before they go up the race. Right now, let's go to Steve at the far end.
Ever closer you come, Darrell. 5:31 though.
Yeah, we're kind of worried ourselves, 5:31. We figured we'd really step up that round. So obviously we went in the wrong direction. So what do you think we're going to do for the next round? Go 180 degrees from what we just did. So we're liable to see something real exciting.
Now here's a car the Canadian fans will be cheering for. The only Canadian in the race, Hector Pickering. He just got his license a few days ago. We'll be back. Back at Santa Ana International Drag Strip for more NHRA Championship drag racing action. Right now, Steve is in the funny car pits.
You're looking at a crew until about a half an hour ago was a very happy group of people. Roland Leong's crew, driver Johnny West, they won in the first round. Win lights have been few and far between. They got back to the pit area and found a spun main bearing in the engine. That block had to come out, and a spare motor has gone in. A spun main is something you just don't run. It's far too dangerous, something that could erupt in a fire and maybe even some injury to the driver. So Roland Leong being very smart that way. He's got a spare motor in. They don't really know what it's capable of. But Johnny West is doing the clutch personally, just really hoping for the best in round 2.
This is one of the situations, Steve, that's really tough on the crew when they put a new engine in. They just don't know exactly how it's going to perform. It's not a tuned piece.
Well, here's some tuning, or rather tightening, going on the starting line. The engine belonging to Hector Pickering. Apparently, they had something leaking out. Oh, in fact, it's fuel down there. You can see a little fire.
Yes, he was tightening a fuel line. That line that he was tightening is the line that feeds those port nozzles. So he dumped a lot of fuel. It run down on the ground, caught on fire.
Well, as Hector pulls into the water area for the all-important tire heating burnout, it looks like they've stopped that leak. But Hector's got more problems than just a potential leak. He sees in front of him in the far lane the man himself, the Winston champion, Dick LaHaye. And Dick started the new season off with a bang, winning the season-opening Winter Nationals out in California, but has struggled ever since because he went to a new engine combination, the maximum size, 500 cubic inches. You'd think that bigger is better, but that has not been the case for family LaHaye. So here in Canada, they have gone back to the smaller engine, hoping to find some consistency. Hector Pickering from Kingston, Ontario, Canada. And this has got to be a thrill for him to participate for the first time and the only time, really, that NHRA Championship drag racing goes north of the border. So a big moment for Hector Pickering. Right now, Don, I'm sure he's not concerned with Dick LaHaye. He just wants a good, safe, straight ride.
That's right, Steve. These cars are very powerful, and when you've been out of them for a while, they concern you. And I'm sure that Hector is concerned right now that he is going to make a good, safe run, and nothing's going to happen to the car that would cause him to get out of shape going down course.
And Dick LaHaye has got to be thinking, don't do anything stupid. This is a guy that you should beat. He's a rookie. And LaHaye is gone like a shot. Hector Pickering has all kinds of problems. It was almost as if Hector just sat there watching LaHaye. There is Kim LaHaye, crew chief on the car, and Dick's daughter saying, all right, Dad, we're going to the semifinal round with a 5:25. That's a good number for LaHaye this season, 269 miles per hour. Let's take one more look. Now watch how quickly LaHaye is away.
But really what happens here, Steve, Pickering was just extremely late, and then that thing happened just like we talked about. The car did a wheel stand, unloaded, smoked the tires. He never had a chance. You're fixing to take a ride in Eddie Hill's Top Fuel Dragster with Diamond P's in-car camera. It'll give you an idea what it's like to ride one of these monsters. His opponent will be Paul Smith, the number 13 qualifier. Right now, Steve is with Dick LaHaye at the far end.
A 5:25 will put Dick LaHaye in the semifinals, and those are good words, Dick, considering the season that you've had so far.
Well, it's been a long time, Steve. You know, and
we haven't talked much lately.
That's a fact. And this car that we just raced, I guess it's Eastern Canada's probably quickest car, and I was a little concerned about him, and I thought that we better, you know, pay attention to what's going on.
You found your consistency. Not as quick as you'd like, but it's consistent. 5:25, 5:24.
That's true, and that's our biggest thing is we get consistent, and then we can go race. So it looks as though like the little motor's going to be back for a while, and we just have to work with it.
Okay, thanks a lot.
By little motor, Dick LaHaye means only 484 cubic inches as compared to 500.
Again, we ride with Eddie Hill, the low qualifier, the quickest man at this event at 5'11", his wife Mercy very carefully guiding him back in the right track. You see that little white dome out on the nose of the car? That is what microwaves this picture back to our remote television facility. And Don, Eddie Hill, even though he qualified at 5'11", fell off in the first round to a 5:24. Do you think he's just backed it down intentionally?
No, I think, Steve, that what has happened, they've lost some little combination here. Who knows? They might have hurt something, a fuel pump or a magneto, and it's just not quite right.
Paul Smith, his opponent, is riding in a Top Fuel dragster owned by Chuck Etchells, a funny car racer. Well, Paul is the crew chief on Etchells' funny car, and they run the spare motor out of the funny car in this dragster for a little cash flow. Eddie Hill has won a lot of money this year. He's won 2 NHRA championship events, the first of his career. He also holds the national record at 5:06 and is unofficially the fastest dragster in the history of the sport at 288 miles per hour. Ursi very carefully getting Eddie up into staging proximity. For safety reasons, she'll be asked to back away as she does.
This is one of the most important times in the race, placing the car properly on the starting line so that you get a real good start. We're in the car now. We're off. Look at the body panels buckle under the 4 G's of gravity. And we're at the end. We just went 269 miles an hour.
And we did it in 5.23 seconds. And we know from the picture that Eddie Hill never saw Paul Smith. That's because Paul had some problems and shut the engine down way before he got to the finish line. So Eddie Hill advances. And back in the funny car pits, work is underway on Don the Snake Prudhomme's machine. His very young crew prepares it for a second round confrontation. There you see him tightening the final bolts on the oil pan. They've looked at all the bearings and ascertained that everything's okay there. Now his opponent will be Bruce Larson, and this is his pit area with a strong brew of nitromethane and just a little bit of alcohol for seasoning going into that tank. Stay with us. We'll be back to the province of Quebec for more drag racing right after this. Drag races in Quebec, Canada. I'm Steve Evans along with Don Garlitz. And here you see the threat, as the drag racers call it, as John Force's funny car is prepared for round 2 action. Crewman on the right torquing down the heads, a very important operation. The man on the left working on the valve trim of the automobile. And Top Fuel action round 2 continues. And here is one tough customer, Gary Ormsby in the near lane.
Ormsby's been running real good this year, and they got a good crew chief over there, Steve. Lee Beard has been turning the wrenches and getting some good performance.
And here's a great look at Gene Snow's automobile, the man who won the Winston All-Stars and $50,000 recently. Now, this is a very unique machine, Don. It's the only car in the field that is high gear only. There's no transmission in this car.
Well, you know, Gene Snow years ago had no transmission in his funny car, Rambunctious, and it was very successful, and he feels that this is the time and place for high gear in our sport today.
Well, that's right. The transmissions were getting to the point that there were only 8, 10, 12% underdrive anyway. It took a lot of power to turn that transmission. So Snow has a very radical clutch in the automobile. It's got 5 stages and really works much like a transmission.
Yes, it does. It always keeps the engine at one particular RPM, and what they call it, they just keep firing clutch at the engine.
Don, every time you see those little front wheels like Gene Snow is running, you've got to think, I brought that to the sport.
Yeah, actually, Steve, I brought them into the sport so that I could put them underneath the fairing up there, you know, to streamline it. But the guys are using them now just because they're shorter and less resistance.
Gene Snow, a true pioneer in the sport of drag racing. Many call him the father of the funny car. Now an old man in Fort Worth. Gary Ormsby, a very successful car dealer in Roseville, California, has been drag racing as a hobby for many, many years. Now with some strong corporate sponsorship, he's doing it very seriously.
There was Lee Beard making a few final last-minute adjustments.
Let's remember now that car on the far lane, Gene Snow, the high gear only machine. He was the quickest of them all in round number 1 at 5:16. He has lane choice. His lap time in round 1 was quicker than Ormsby's. Snow has selected that far lane. The staging process continuing. Ormsby with the more traditional front wheels, and they are off right together, a beautiful drag race.
Yeah, watch that high gear. Just a little bit of puff of smoke in the middle of the course. A lot of death smoke coming out of Gene Snow's car. He's got serious engine problems.
And that may account for the machine slowing down 0.08 of a second to a 5:24 at 247 miles per hour. Let's take one more look, Big Daddy.
As they leave the line, the high gear car definitely has starting line advantage. You see, you can leave harder, Steve, when you don't have to worry about the transmission. He moves out just a little bit, and look at the high gear when the clutches finally lock up. You see the smoke come off the rear wheels, and the car just makes a giant leap for the finish line. But there's the death smoke coming out of the engine. That's not tire smoke, that's engine smoke. That win puts Gene Snow into the semifinals against Eddie Hill. Hill has the lane choice of this pair. The other semifinal pair puts Darrell Gwynn against Dick LaHaye. LaHaye has the lane choice.
Being an oil man, Gene Snow, you'd like to pump it out of the ground, not out of your engine. Plenty came out of this one.
That's a smart aleck remark, Mr. Evans, but that's the truth. That baby's covered with oil. We either burn a piston or threw a rod out of it. I don't know which. It was shaking pretty bad, but we won, and that's the name of it, and we'll just put in another soldier.
A 524 cost you lane choice.
Yeah, that's all right. This little car doesn't seem to mind the lane choices. I'm not really worried about it. We're, very pleased with the 516 last run, then I guess a 24 then.
Just before we walked up, I heard Ursi Hill yell something at you. What was that?
I think she said, oh, man, is that the best you can do? I told her no, I was saving the best for you, but we just kid around a lot. They're good people.
Okay, sure, Gene. He's saving his best.
Snow may be kidding around, but in fact, then his crew have got a lot of work to do. Back in Jim Head's funny car pit area, we get a real good look at what we mean by high gear only. See that transmission? There's nothing in it. He's just bolting a reverser on there, but that case is empty. He's a high gear only car, and that's for sure.
And the only one in funny car competition we'll be seeing later on. Right now it's time for round number 2 of Pro Stocks. A lot of people call them the factory hot rods. And they do the burnout in a much different fashion, Don.
Yeah, they do a little different thing. They're not like making the big long tracks out on the drag strip. They're more or less just heating the tires up to make them sticky.
And they do that in a stationary style by pushing a little thing they call the line lock that electronically locks up the front brakes and holds the car so you can spin those rear tires. And in this matchup, we have got Mark Howick, who was a runner-up to Butch Leal at the Winter Nationals, the opening race of the year, and he will be up against Don Campanella. The whole Pro Stock thing this year has changed. There is parity. You can have 16 cars qualified within 5 or 600ths of a second of each other, and no one knows it better than Don Campanella of Wayne, New Jersey. He's just feels fortunate to get his Oldsmobile into the field. Mark Howick, what a rising young star this man is. Medina, Ohio, he relies on a Trans Am. He'll be in the far lane.
These Pro Stock, Steve, are really professional operations. They look like they'd be kind of fun to me.
Well, I'll tell you, some folks will tell you they're the hardest car to drive in drag racing. They make almost 900 horsepower, have a very short wheelbase. The driver extremely busy with a 4-speed transmission. And once these cars, if indeed they get loose, a little oil, water under the tires, they're going to be hooked. Buster Katz is saying, move in here and stage. They're playing some mind games there, and I believe that little incident may have cost Don Campanella dearly. He overreacted to the Christmas tree, a red light, a foul start. He's disqualified. Mark Howick with a 758, 183 miles per hour, goes to the semis. So as Howick with the shootout safely turns off the racetrack, we'll go back to the starting line where we find this man blazing the tires, Tony Christian.
Yes, and he's in a beautifully prepared Beretta. You know, Steve, he won the Mid-South Nationals, so he's been in the winner's circle this year. He faces Reed Wisnett from Atlanta, Georgia. He's driving a Camaro. Wisnett qualified number 6. Right now, Steve is with Mark Howick at the far end.
Well, Mark, it seemed for a moment up there as if no one wanted to race. Everybody just sat there in the pre-stage beams. What's going on?
Well, Steve, it's gotten so competitive. There was about 3 or 4 thousandths of a second separating Don and myself. And I guess it was anybody's race, and we were trying to use a psychological advantagement. And it worked to my best benefit this race.
You know, sometimes when that happens, when you do stage, Buster Couch will keep you there at full throttle for a while. He gets his paybacks in, too.
Yeah, I know he does, and my intention at all isn't to play any games on the starting line. I try to do my same routine every time, and this time it worked to my advantage.
758.
Great. Thank you, Steve.
A lot of psychological warfare going on at that starting line, let me tell you, and it's critical in this Pro Stock business.
It is indeed. Tony Christian, an interesting story. A very successful commodities broker from Chicago that just got fed up with the pressure, moved to Florida, and is now a full-time Pro Stock racer. Now, his competition, Reed Wisnett, has been Pro Stock racing as long as there has been Pro Stock. He's a plumbing contractor from Atlanta. And earlier today, in round number 1, he defeated this man, Bruce Allen, in the Rear and Morris and Beretta from Arlington, Texas. Bruce, the winner of 2 races this year, the Gator Nationals and the Cajun Nationals. But in round number 1, he was just not up to the measure of Reed Wisnett. Let's look back at that race and see how it unfolded. Reed Wisnett won it on driving ability. He ran slower than Bruce Allen, but won this contest. I talked to Allen when it was all over. That's just how competitive Pro Stock has become. The only 2-time winner this season goes out the first round. He beat you with a 751.
Yeah, Reed's been running real good. We haven't been running real good here. Handled a few problems, but hey, it's close and everybody's running real fast, and you pull up there and do the best job you can. And Reed, I think, got out a little bit on me. Just did a good job.
Wouldn't you say this season is putting more emphasis on driving right up that starting line than any season in the past?
Absolutely. And with everything as close as it is, it even puts more pressure on you because you know you got to do a good job. And then when you get up there and don't, it's so close that if you don't do a good job, you're not going to win.
See you next race.
Yeah.
And we got a pair of leavers on the line now. We got Reed Whistler in the far lane and Tony Christian in the near lane. And this race will probably be decided by who leaves the line first. So there'll be some heavy concentration going on now.
All right, it's a dead even start. Performance is actually, in this particular contest, going to determine the winner, and who's got it? Oh, by about a fender. Tony Christian in the near lane advances to the semifinals at 7:48, a nice number, 185 miles per hour.
Let's watch that again, Steve. Whistler, in fact, does get a slight starting line advantage, but it doesn't hold on for long because Tony Christian was making some severe horsepower this afternoon and starts to gain a little bit of an advantage, stretches it out to about a half a car as they hit the finish line. Christian advances to the next round.
Out of the bright red Beretta comes just about the hottest driver on this course today, Tony Christian, a 7:48. Good one.
Getting there. I don't know. Hope Butch runs a little slower so I get lane choice.
That'll be your opponent in the semis?
Well, I hope so. Butch has been a little nemesis to me. I'd like to beat him once.
Okay.
I really would.
We'll be watching along with Tony Christian.
Reed congratulates Tony there. A lot of sportsmanship in this business. Meanwhile, back in Darrell Gwynn's pit area, we see his dad, the crew chief, Jerry Gwynn, working on the fuel pump overdrive. He's trying to get the mixture right by either speeding the pump up or slowing it down. Very fine line in this business. We'll be right back. Grand National, where nearly 30,000 people are enjoying a beautiful sunny day. Let's go to Steve with a report from the Top Fuel pits.
Major business in Gene Snow's pits. The smoke we saw at the finish line the round before wasn't just a couple of burned pistons. Far more serious. A spare engine is being bolted into the car. Here's the damaged engine out of the race machine. Now look down here. See this hole in the side of the block? Well, that's why they're changing engines. It happened because of one of these, a connecting rod, and it broke right here, right at the neck. And that allows all of this mass still attached here to the crankshaft to swing around inside that engine. They'll be lucky if there's just that one hole, if that's all the damage there is, because that can be fixed and welded up. Now, what happens to the piston and the pin when it is free of the rod? Well, if they're lucky, it just wedged into the cylinder and maybe scored the liner, which is easily replaced. If they're unlucky, they shot up and damaged these expensive billet cylinder heads, or at least one of the heads, and busted some valves off. They won't know that until they do the post-mortem. But that's what happened inside this violent racing engine. The good news is their spare motor is fresh and will be ready to go for the semis.
The bad news is it takes an awful lot of time to get an unproven piece into the car and ready to go.
Well, here he is, the legend as far as leaving the starting line in Pro Stock. That is Butch Leal and his Trans Am from Black Lick, Ohio. It's just incredible, the reflexes that Leal possesses. He's over 40 years of age, but maybe that's part of it, experience. He'll be racing Frank Iaconio. Iaconio, a longtime General Motors racer, 2 years ago went to a Ford Thunderbird and found out that not anybody can be a Bob Glidden. He took all of last year off and is now back with a beautiful Trans Am based out of New Jersey. A several-time NHRA national event winner. Butch Leal, well, he used to be called the California Flash until a half a dozen years ago he moved to Black Lick, Ohio. Butch is taking his time staging, even though Frank Iaconio had rushed up and put on both his yellow lights trying to confuse Leal or possibly hurry him. It has not worked with this veteran driver. Leal finally bumps into the beams, and it is Leal away first, as he always seems to be. Leal and Iaconio, what a drag race this is. Oh, my. Butch Leal at a 7:50 defeats Frank Iaconio's quicker 7:46. Don Garlitz, he's done it again.
Watch that leave, Steve. Is he incredible? Almost immediately, he's got a half a car advantage. And they move down the track, and you think he's just going to completely pull away. But Iaconio begins to make some power, and watch him close it up. Well, if they'd have had another 66 feet to go, they'd have probably beat him. And Butch Leal advances.
I guess it's just the many years of racing that Butch Leal always seems to know when you need a distinctive starting line advantage. He ran 7:46, you ran 7:50, you go to the semis.
That's great, Steve. We finally got this Trans Am Pontiac running pretty well, and I made a lane choice there, and obviously it wasn't the right one. I ran 48 the run before, and I guess a 50 then.
You can get back in the 40s?
I think so. It spun awful hard on the starting line, and we're going to go for it, so It looked like to me that he got by me. That's how hard he was moving.
No.
And, well, that's the way it goes. And Frankie's a good racer. And I think he was one of the best left. And we'll find out what happens from here on.
Okay. Iaconio moving up the stage didn't bother Butch Leal one bit.
Leo may find there's a couple of other good ones left out there, such as Jerry Ekman driving his Trans Am there, or the guy in the other lane, Morris Johnson Jr., who's no slouch at starting line procedure also.
Morris Johnson Jr. may be the closest driver that I've seen in a long time to Butch Leo. Bob Glidden found out this year at the Winter Nationals with Morris hole shot at him out of the field in the very first round. This is really Morris's first serious year of pro stock competition. He's a very successful irrigation contractor from Midlothian, Virginia. His opponent, Jerry Ekman from California, enjoyed the biggest payday in pro stock history a month ago at the Winston All-Stars in Atlanta, $30,000. Morris Johnson Jr. in round number 1 faced off with Joe Lapone. And you think that little staging war we saw earlier in round 2 between Mark Powick and Don Campanella was something? Well, take a look back with us at round number 1. Lapone is in the far lane, Johnson in the near lane. They sit there forever with nothing but the pre-stage lights on. Now, starter Buster Couch has Holden. I have had enough of this, and for the first time that I can recall anyway, Buster says, you guys are out of here. Why don't you just go park them somewhere out of my sight, and when you get ready to race, let me know.
That's exactly what he did, Stephen. You know, that's the first time that I've ever seen it in the sport, but I'm telling you, it was time that he got their attention, because at the Columbus, at the Spring Nationals, they had a staging duel, and an engine blew right on the line.
That's right.
And Buster's sick of it.
Oh, absolutely, and he controls this starting line. That's his territory. Jerry Ekman knows that, and so does Morris Johnson Jr. You can bet you're not going to see any games played here. They'll both bump in and stage, bring those RPMs up to about 7,500, drop the clutches, and they are away. Morris Johnson Jr. has a better reaction time than even Butch Leo did.
And Leo will be sorry to hear that, you can bet, because that's how he wins the races.
Morris Johnson Jr. also outruns Jerry Ekman, a 7:45 to a 7:48. Johnson goes to the semis.
Both cars cut an excellent light. Slight advantage going to Johnson, which gives him about a half a car lead. But Ekman's car is running really good. They move down course. They're pretty much nip and tuck. But just a little additional horsepower on Morris Johnson's part puts him out about a half a car in front of Ekman and gives him the win. And that sets up the pairing for the semifinals in pro stock, with Mark Powick faced off against Morris Johnson Jr. Morris Johnson Jr. has the lane choice. Butch Leo against Tony Christian, and Tony Christian has the lane choice. Right now, let's go to Steve.
Morris, you have got a lot going for you as you head to the semis. Low lamps time of the round at 7:45. Good reaction times. Everything's right.
Well, I tell you, that when you got a crew like I've got and Dave Butner turning wrenches, they make it so much easier, and I just have to do my job every once in a while and drive.
You're very comfortable in this car. Obviously, it shows in your starting line abilities.
Yeah, the car, we took a lot of time in setting it up for a big guy, and it has to feel comfortable to be able to drive at the speeds we're running now, and especially with the clutches we run now. To get a reaction time, you have to have the car real quick.
Hope you can keep this momentum going.
Thank you, sir. Thanks, Steve.
Morris Johnson, fine guy.
Well, he's certainly correct about that, Steve. That's one of the best feelings you can get, is to have a car that's reacting. In the Eddie Hill pit area, notice the calm that's going on. Everybody's in control, no big thrashing. That's because they have not had serious engine damage at this race.
Yeah, it's a bit different story over at Gene Snow's pit, where they are still thrashing. All right, it's time for the most spectacular cars in all of NHRA drag racing, the nitro-burning AA fuel bunny cars. And smoking the tires violently in his Thunderbird was Mark Oswald. He'll be up against this man, Jim Head. Head Chevrolet Cavalier-bodied machine is the only high-gear car in the bunny car field. We saw that empty transmission a little earlier back in his trailer. And so far, Head has had some success with this. In fact, at the Mid-South Nationals in Memphis earlier this season, it was Jim Head and Mark Oswald. Head had to settle for the runner-up spot there. He says the high gear's a little hard on parts, but makes the car easy to drive. Mark Oswald, he's a professional from Cleves, Ohio. He doesn't care if they're easy to drive as long as they're quick and fast. Car owner Paul Canby is backing away from the Oswald-driven machine as he moves up to stage that automobile. Remember, there has not been a repeat winner in all of the action this year in the bunny car category. Jim Head has a chance to extend that string. He is winless so far. A runner-up his best finish. And they're off the mark. It's a good start. Mark Oswald appears to have the strength on.
Yes, the Leonard Hughes power comes on and powers the car to a nice, easy victory over Head, who only could muster a 565 to the 555 for Mark Oswald. We saw a little smoke come out of the back of the car. Perhaps he'll have to do some piston changing. So we watch again from the replay. We notice that Head does get a slight starting line advantage because of the high gear. He can leave harder. Mark Oswald has to feather the throttle a little bit to start to keep from spinning the tires using a transmission. But in the middle, where it really counts, you can see the power come on, and Oswald takes a definite advantage as he heads toward the finish line to win the round.
Frightening moment down here for Mark Oswald. Mark, a bit of a bang. The throttle stuck?
Yeah, the throttle stuck open. They had to pull the fuel shut off to shut the motor off, and luckily, you know, the burst plate blew out, and it looks like that's all it did. We have to get back and take a closer look at it.
I've got the blower about hit in my hand. That's because of the blower backfire?
Yeah, the throttle was stuck wide open. Like I said, I pulled the fuel shut off to take the fuel away, and then it banged.
That means you'd have to change superchargers, probably?
And maybe more than that. We'll just have to see.
We'll see you in a bit.
Thank you.
Oswald doing one heck of a job controlling a 4,000 horsepower car locked in full throttle. Meanwhile, back in the Gene Snow pit area, we see that progress is not going quite as well as Gene would expect. You see that frown on Gene's face. That means that he's not real happy with the situation that he's being faced with there, trying to get ready for the next round. We'll have more from Montreal after this.
Drag races continue here at Santa International Drag Strip. And here's a funny car team in round number 2 whose only opponent is the clock. That is crew chief Austin Coyle for driver John Force. And in that, an odd number of cars have advanced to round number 2. Force will have a single or a bye run by virtue of being the low elapsed time in the event, the quick qualifier. He pops open the roof hatch to get a little fresh air in there. Now, what he wants, this man from Yorba Linda, California, is lane choice. He will race Mark Oswald in the semis. He needs to run quicker than Oswald's 5:55 we saw a few minutes ago. And certainly there's no man capable of giving him any more horsepower than Austin Coyle, who we just saw, Big Daddy John Garland.
And another unusual situation going on here. Most of the drivers have chosen the far lane when they had lane choice, but Force is in the near lane. It could be that he's testing this lane.
Indeed he is. In case he doesn't get lane choice, that's likely to be where he is. The timer reads out 5:54. He indeed has beaten the clock. John Force will have lane choice over Mark Oswald when that race comes about a little later on.
The next car up is Don the Snake Prudhomme, driving his Pontiac Trans Am. Don has been out of the winner's circle since the Gators a year ago. And believe me, that's not the Snake's way. He's trying to get back in the groove and get that thing running because the Snake likes to be a winner. Makes a very nice burnout. He'll be faced up against Bruce Larson in his Oldsmobile. Bruce Larson, the ever-important burnout, getting the tires hot. Got to get that traction. Larson is in the near lane. Now, that's not the lane that's been favored by the drivers. The Snake, he has the lane of his choice, the far lane. It has been developing the best times. Let's go to Steve.
All John Force wants to hear from us right now is an elapsed time quicker than Mark Oswald's. For lane choice purposes, I have one for you, 5:54. Great job.
We're gonna need that. Coyle made a decision up there on which lane we were going to run, and he thought that right lane was better, and it ran close enough, but it gave us the edge. That's what we needed.
That was a brave decision. Almost everyone who's had lane choice has gone to the far lane.
Well, yeah, but Coyle looks some lanes over pretty well, and he makes that decision, and it seems to work. So I'm real pleased with it, and I guess most of all today, a lot of things are turning. Seeing Bernstein go out first round was exciting to us, so it gave us a chance here to race for the points.
Your first big race, your first big win was right here a year ago, and I wasn't standing down here to see it. I'm still sorry about that.
I missed you, but I made up for it at Columbus when I tried to break your back hugging you there.
John Force, how's the baby?
Fine.
Steve, of course, referring to John Force's baby girl, born just hours after he won the Spring Nationals. Back on the starting line, we see, look at that, the Snake makes a dry hump. I haven't seen him make one of those in quite some time. Probably getting a little starting line procedure change there.
Well, more of the drivers, Don, seem to be doing that. It's a little bit of a test. Bruce Larson from Dauphine, Pennsylvania, winner of the Cajun Nationals this year, always does a dry burnout. Now we see Don Prudhomme doing just that, and it's kind of a preview of coming attractions. If you smoke the tires on the dry, the crew chief usually indicates to the driver to leave a little earlier or hold the brakes to slow down the wheel speed. But boy, the Snake hooked up on the dry.
So that means he can get after it when the light goes green, and that's just exactly what he wants to do. These drivers hate to hold on the brakes, Steve, because that actually slows them down just a little bit.
But it's better than smoking the tires if that's what you've got to do. A perfect reaction by both drivers. Don Prudhomme, Bruce Larson. A wonderful drag race. Mike Clover looking on Prudhomme's crew chief as he wins it 5:50. That's the best time we have seen today during funny car eliminations. A good speed, 262 miles per hour. Larson right there with a 5:59.
And notice Prudhomme's car was clean after the run.
bet it was. And look at this beautiful red, orange, and blue machine. This is Jerry Caminito, who was the big benefactor of Kenny Bernstein's red light start in round number 1. He is up against, and they got it back together, Johnny West and Roland Leong's car. You remember they hurt an engine badly in round 1 and had the piece one together. They made it to the staging lanes and the starting line.
A real tribute to the crew, Steve, that can do that kind of work. Remember, they built this engine from complete scratch. It's a miracle that it would even start. Let's go to the far end with Steve.
Don Prudhomme was low elapsed time of the first round at a 5:50. He is low elapsed time of the second round with another 5:50. Snake, it looks like some of that venom is with us today.
Well, the car is working pretty good here in Montreal, and we're a little out of breath. We've been working at it for a while, and just trying to get the car consistent. That's the key to the game.
What about the ride itself? Smooth?
No, it wasn't. It shook a little bit out there, and if we could straighten that out, I think it'll run a little bit quicker, but it shook a little bit to low gear.
You're in control right now.
Well, let's hope we can do all the way. Thanks, Steve.
That shake the Snake refers to is that the engine is not making quite enough power, and that's what causes the whole car to shake as it tries to get up on those tires.
Here is the Blue Thunder Dodge Daytona of Jerry Caminito. Caminito from Brooklyn, New York. You seldom see outside of the East Coast. Conversely, Johnny West and Roland Leong's car runs more races a year than any other driver, with a possible exception of John Force. They do a lot of match racing. All right, the roof hatch is up on Johnny West's car. I think that's just to get some of the fumes out of the car. Very little breeze today, and it's quite warm. Jerry Caminito, he is ready to race. This guy, Don, is always so pumped up. He doesn't get that big an opportunity to meet the superstars of the sport, and every once in a while he'll knock one off, and that's what he lives for.
You bet. Anybody likes to race the superstars. I can remember the days I raced. They really like to beat me.
Oh. All right, it is Johnny West away. First, Caminito may have had a little problem at the starting line. He was very, very late. Johnny West with a 570 at 251 miles an hour. The Caminito's slowing 6.05. Now, West will wish he'd run a little quicker because he's going to have to race Don the Snake Prudhomme when the semifinals roll around. And here are the pairings for the semis. As we said, it will be West up against Prudhomme, and Prudhomme obviously has the lane choice. We'll see again if he takes that far lane. Now, in the John Force Mark Oswald confrontation, both drivers may have the lane they want because Force seems to like that near lane. Right now, let's go down to the staging lanes and Big Daddy Don Garlis for some predictions on the semi.
As we go into the semifinal, Dick LaHaye seems to have regained some of that performance edge that he lost earlier this year. He has the lane choice over Darrell Gwynn, and Gwynn has only run 531 to a 525 for Dick LaHaye. So that gives Dick LaHaye quite an advantage, and I think that Dick LaHaye will win the semifinal and go into the final. On the other side of the ladder, it's a totally different story. As you saw earlier, Snow has had a tremendous engine explosion and has had to change the engine. On top of that, Eddie Hill has lane choice. Now, this track is not all that bad from lane to lane, but psychologically, it has affected the drivers. They want the lane that they run good in. Snow is not going to get that lane. Plus, he's thinking about this engine, this brand new engine he's put in here. He's not going to have time to start it or do anything like that. He's got to take it the way it came out of the box. I just don't think he's going to cut the mustard with it.
Well, there you heard it from Big Daddy. Over in the Mark Oswald pit, you see a hone going in the steel liner and that aluminum block. Take any perfections out to those piston rings will seat immediately. We'll be back with more from the province of Quebec right after this. Young man about to go to work. A professional in a top fuel director, Darrell Gwynn. And there is what we called earlier the dry burnout or the dry hop. You saw all of that smoke off the tires. That is not good news to the crew. You can bet Darrell felt that as well. His opponent backing up in the other lane, none other than the Winston champion, Dick LaHaye. Now, LaHaye had lane choice and has chosen that far lane. It may be more for traction reasons than just the smoothness of the ride. Sometimes a couple of bumps in the asphalt will cause the driver to select the other lane. And here, coming into the staging lanes with the crew on board the chassis, still working on the engine, is Gene Snow. Snow is strapped into the car, but the car is not yet ready to race, judging by all the people attached to it.
The crew hasn't even had a chance to start this engine. They haven't even folded it all together. They don't know what's going to happen.
Well, Dick LaHaye is oblivious to all of those problems. They're behind him. He's concentrating on his sole mission of getting back into the thick of the points chase for a $150,000 season-end bonus. He's got that little motor tuned to perfection. Darrell Gwynn with an edge as far as the size of the engine is concerned. In fact, about 26 more cubic inches. Darrell Gwynn and Dick LaHaye are off right together. It's a good drag race. It's a great drag race. Dick LaHaye wins it, goes to the semis at 5:26 to Darrell's 5:31. Just some super side-by-side competition. NHRA's reaction timers tell us that a slight edge went to Darrell Gwynn. You can barely see it visually. Gwynn in the near lane, and you can bet right now he's holding that brake for all it's worth. And about here, he'll let it go. But it's to no avail. Dick LaHaye in the far lane, who had the clutch combination maybe just a little bit more right on, wins by just a few feet. Let's quickly go down to the starting line area and Don Garlits. Don?
We got real drama going on here. They're buckling Gene in. Eddie Hill is in the car. They're still working on this car. You can see the mechanics. They've got the wrenches. This car has just been completely put together.
Eddie Hill.
A lot of pressure here. A lot of pressure.
Just come out Steve House, Pennzoil in Super Shots.
While this story unfolds, let's go with Steve, who's with Dick LaHaye.
Well, since the first race of the year, the Winter Nationals, which he won, Dick LaHaye has been able to beat the traffic out of most of these races. He's going to have to hang around with us and fight the crowds, and I don't think he'll mind one bit of 5:26, Dick. Nice one.
Hey, at least it's been consistent. We keep changing it, and the weather keeps changing on us, and we're just keeping up with the weather is what it amounts to. I'm very pleased. I imagine Kim is just... and the whole crew is probably very pleased. This is the first final round since February, I guess it was. And
we're all pleased for you, believe me.
Well, I'll tell you, it's a jungle out there. These guys are flying.
Indeed. Okay, one more round to go for Dick LaHaye.
Dick LaHaye goes into a final round for only the second time this year. We're riding in Eddie Hill's car with the Diamond Pete in-car camera. We're going to take another one of those exciting rides. This is backing up, getting into the tracks. This is what it looks like with all that power behind you and you're driving it backwards.
How about Gene Snow? That engine has come to life, Don. And what do you think? You're the expert. Look at those header pipes. Is it running right?
It's running great, and I don't see anything dripping out of it. That's another good sign.
Absolutely, and as you said, they had no time to check that engine back in the pits, fire it up through leaks or whatever. So Eddie Hill right now, who maybe thought for a minute he might even get a single run here, suddenly looks over and sees what appears to be, anyway, a very stout Gene Snow.
You know, Steve, Eddie Hill may be having second thoughts about being such a sportsman and waiting as he listens to that stout Gene Snow motor cackling over there.
And here are two distinctly different machines. Gene Snow's car is virtually the hydromatic. You just step on the throttle, the clutch automatically goes through all its phases. Eddie Hill has a 2-speed, which he shifts right there. He has to manually lock up his clutch. Eddie Hill and Gene Snow. Gene Snow forges ahead in the last 50 feet to win this. A 5:17 to Eddie Hill's quicker 5:16. One of the best races of the season.
Watch this start. Look at that high gear car move. Now, you wouldn't think that a high gear car sans a transmission could make a lead like that, but Snow has done it. Moves right out in front of Eddie Hill with a beautiful reaction time and stretches it right out to about a half a car. That sets up our Top Fuel final, Dick LaHaye versus Gene Snow. And would you believe Snow has lane choice?
For the second race in a row, Gene Snow has towed into the staging lanes with his crew still attached to the motor. This time you won it, and your driving did it. A 17 to his 16. Wow.
I was really hyper. I don't hardly know what to say. It was a last-minute deal. We didn't know if we were going to make it. We came up there. I didn't know if it was going to start. It started. I didn't know if it hooked. It did. I mean, I just love them people down there, Eddie and Ursi. They're wonderful, but we got to win sometimes, I guess, and I got to take it as they come, and I appreciate them waiting if they did. We were so enthused, we didn't know what we were doing back there time-wise.
You had to have seen each other all the way down the racetrack.
Yeah, it was a seesaw back and forth, and finally right at the end, while I pulled around him just a little bit, it was a super race.
My hats are off everybody's to this young crew.
These guys did a hell of a job. We weren't quite as prepared as we should be, but I'm telling you, under stress, we worked excellent, and it was great.
Indeed. Final round bound.
Thank you.
Final touches being put on John Force's funny car for the semifinal round. Right now, let's go to our trackside tipster, Big Daddy Don Garlits, for his selections.
The feature event in the funny car semifinal has got to be the race between these two cars. The red and white car of Candies and Hughes, driven by Mark Oswald, and the green and white car driven by John Force. Now, John Force has low ET by 1/100th of a second, 5:54, to Candy's car, driven by Mark Oswald, 5:55. But that little bit of margin causes me to believe that John Force is going to be the winner, because Austin Cole really tunes this thing, and I think he'll step on it just a little bit, and that'll give him the edge. This will be your winner on this side of the ladder. Now, on the other side of the ladder, I don't think West is going to be any match for Don Perdome with his 550 to West's 570, so I think Perdome will win that one easily, and we're probably going to see Perdome and Force in the final.
Okay, thanks, Don. That racket you all hear in the background is the semifinals of Pro Stock. You remember Tony Christian, after his second-round win, says, I hope I get to race Butch Leal. Well, he gets his wish. There is Butch Leal in the far lane in the Trans Am, Tony Christian in the near lane in the Chevrolet Beretta. They are both ready to go, and it is Leal reacting first, but only by 2/100ths of a second. Tony Christian is right there with Butch Leal. It is Butch Leal. They run identical elapsed times, 7:48 apiece, but Leal's slight starting line advantage wins it for him.
Well, if Christian didn't believe that Leal was a lever, he knows it now, because this is what won the race. It was who left that starting line first. Both cars were almost identical in mile per hour, ET, everything, but that tiny little starting line advantage that Leal picked up, 2/100ths, made the difference at the end. And what this proves, nobody has a car that's so good you can afford to get sloppy at the starting line. Steve with Butch.
Need I ask if that was close? Both of you ran 7:48.
Oh, I couldn't tell who won. We were looking at each other. Once we get in high gear, you can turn and look, Steve. And I'm sitting there looking at Tony, and I said, go, baby. I said, let's get this Pontiac. I said, I wanted to thump that Chevy. You know, he's made the comment about thumping Bled and thumping Fords, and I said, let's get that Beretta, you know. And so Pontiac got another Beretta again, so I feel good about it, and I'm sure Pontiac will, too.
Well, speaking of Pontiac, Steve, we're fixing to watch two more of them do battle in just a moment.
We are indeed. There is Mark Powick. Powick will be over in the far lane. In the near lane is the black and silver car of Boris Johnson Jr. In just one season, he's become a name to reckon with. Powick with a Butch Leal quality lead. Powick with the advantage based on the start. Boris Johnson Jr. comes around. This Pro Stock racing is unbelievable. Johnson wins it with a 7:44 to a losing 7:52. But Mark Powick was in it all the way, Don.
Oh, I mean, did he get a leave on him or what? It looked to me like he'd never be able to make it up. But the Morris Johnson Jr. power began to pay off, and he gathered up just a little bit of that advantage that Powick had from the starting line. By the time they got to three-quarters, they must have been side by side, and as they went into the traps, he put a couple of inches on him to win the race. And that sets up our Pro Stock final. Butch Leal against Morris Johnson Jr. Johnson has the lane choice.
I'll tell you, it's been a long time since I've talked to a Pro Stock driver taller than I am, but the big guy has got it. Low ET of eliminations, Morris, a 7:44.
Fantastic. I tell you, Dave Buckner has got this engine just pumping out some horsepower, and we found the track.
And we've got a final run between you and Butch Leal, a couple of guys that like to carve the tree real close, real medium rare.
I tell you, it's Butch is fantastic. He's best in the business, and he's good friends with David, my crew chief, so we're looking forward to having a real good run in the final.
A lot of folks think it's time, that you're just a guy waiting for a win.
Well, I tell you, if you get to the finals enough times, I think eventually it'll happen.
Don't talk to John Force too much about that. We'll see you in the final.
Thank you, sir.
And here is John Force setting in the staging lanes. He'll be up against Mark Oswald in the funny car semifinals. Coming up next.
Back at Santa International Drag Strip in the Top Fuel pits, it's never easy working on one of these cars, but things are far more relaxed in the G Snow Camp than they were the round before, because this engine only requires normal maintenance. Just take it apart, look at it, put it back together. Here's some guys that have got it all together for the funny car semifinals. Mark Oswald for the famed Candies and Hughes team, the 1984 world champion in the fore lane. The defending Le Grand National champion, John Force, in the near lane. And as we predicted, Big Daddy, Force had lane choice and took this lane. Mark Oswald very satisfied to be on the far side. Hit a red light start by John Force. Mark Oswald thunders through, and no wonder they have their fists in the air. Low elapsed time of the day for the funny cars, 5:49, 267 miles per hour for Mark Oswald, and their winter prediction, Big Daddy, Force red-lighted.
Well, it don't count when they red light.
Oh, I see. John Force is going to drive this back to the trailer out of probably sheer embarrassment. He still has not shut the engine off. Maybe trying to run away from crew chief Austin Coyle. Here is Don the Snake Prudhomme. The Snake didn't mind seeing Force out of this thing one bit. He was the low qualifier. Here's Prudhomme, who by 100th, though, has lost Louis T of the day to Mark Oswald.
He's racing Johnny West. Roland Leon, crew chief and car owner, is no newcomer to the sport. In fact, the Snake used to race for him at one time. Steve?
The Oswald crew just arrived down here, told him we're in a 5:49, but it brought no smiles to your face. There's something wrong with this automobile.
Oh, yeah, we had the same thing, the throttle. We had a problem with the throttle again. I see what it is now. Piece of tubing in the chassis broke.
On this run or the previous run, do you think?
Well, it must have been started to break and we didn't catch it, and then it did it again.
So you're going to do a little welding as well as some wrenching.
Oh, you're going to do a lot of work, Steve.
Okay, Mark Oswald headed back.
Can you imagine the throttle hanging wide open in one of these things twice in the same day? On the starting line, Prudhomme gets ready for another one of those dry hops. And this was a very good one. No smoke off the rear tires. Now, the crew will give Don that message and let him know that the tires did, in fact, stick, and he can get on it full throttle. Right now, let's go down to Steve, who's with John Force.
John, NHRA's very sophisticated electronic timing says that you red-lighted so close, you almost had a green.
We ran just on the edge. We had him covered from the round before, and I was really thinking, well, I'll put a light out here, but I kept thinking about Bernstein, and I was trying to be quick. I should have stayed with the regular game plan. The car's been fast all day. I mean, Austin's had it right on, and my shot came, and I really thought when I cut it, I seen the red. I was dead, but I thought I was doing a hell of a job till I seen that red, and then it kind of fell apart.
That's what I always thought too, Steve, till I saw the red. Well, back on the starting line, Johnny West and Don Prudhomme ease into the station beans. They're off, and it looks like the Snake is on the way to another one. Look at that distance as he stretches it out.
Indeed, it is Don Prudhomme going to the final round at 5:55, 257 miles per hour. Johnny West struggles to a 5:68. So there is your funny car final. Mark Oswald versus Don Prudhomme. Oswald has a lane choice, but I don't think that makes any difference. Prudhomme likes one lane, Oswald likes the other.
Back in Dick LaHaye's pit area, we see Kim LaHaye, the crew chief, working on the engine. She's one of the premier crew chiefs in the business. Now, Steve is with Don Prudhomme.
I don't know if you saw the scoreboards, but Oswald ran a 49, so he's going to determine the lane.
Yeah, but both lanes are pretty good. We just switched over this other lane, so I'm not really that concerned about the lanes right now.
This car, as you feel right now, you just leave it alone?
Yeah, I think so. You know, we're just going to probably try and hop it up a little bit and see what it'll do. I think it'll run real good.
Okay.
Thanks, Steve.
Question is, what does the Snake mean by a little bit? Don, your final round thoughts?
Butch Leo faces Morris Johnson Jr. in the final of Pro Stock. And boy, this is going to be a tough one, because Morris Johnson Jr. has got the edge with a 744. But Butch Leo has the edge that he always gets out of the gate first, but he's got a 748. Going to be very close. So I'm going to just give the call to Morris Johnson Jr. just on the strength that he's going to get the choice of his lane, and that tiny little bit might make the difference. Now, in funny car, we've got Don Prudhomme facing Candies and Hughes' car driven by Mark Oswald. Mark Oswald has a 549, a very good run. In fact, that's the best run in the eliminations. Don Prudhomme's car fell off just a little bit. So Oswald's going to have lane choice, and I think that's going to make the difference. I think Oswald's going to win funny car.
Well, other than that John Force red light, Big Daddy's been deadly accurate today. Stick with us for the finals of Le Grand National. 400 cars began competition 3 days ago. Only 6 remain. The pro finalists of the NHRA Le Grand National, and it's time for Pro Stock. I'm Steve Evans along with Don Garlitz. In the near lane is the newcomer, Morris Johnson Jr. The far lane, the veteran, Butch Leal. Both are driving Trans Am automobiles. I don't have to tell any loyal draggers who fan the big reputation of the man in the far lane. He's known as the leaver. Can he do it here? They leave just about together. In fact, Morris Johnson Jr. had a bit of an advantage. Morris Johnson Jr. all the way as Leal breaks. the first ever win for the big man from Virginia. 7:42, 184 miles per hour.
Well, a dejected Butch Leo coasts down the drag strip with a broken Trans Am Pontiac. Let's watch that start again, Steve. Morris Johnson Jr. definitely gets the advantage off the starting line. Almost unbelievable. And just about there, Butch Leo breaks the car and something happens. He begins to fall back rather rapidly, and Morris Johnson Jr. stretches it out to that fantastic 7:42. Steve is with him.
Morris Johnson Jr. tosses the helmet in the air. The celebration begins. 7:42, your first big NHRA win.
Oh, that's got to be the sweetest of all. Sweetest of all. Especially to beat the man like Butch. I mean, he does such a fantastic job. And I don't know who left first, but our car is so quick in 60 feet that I know I was in front at that point. So
all that matters is who got here first.
Oh, yeah, but this race meant so much to a lot of people other than that. You know, the wind light's great. I just tickled to death.
And there wasn't much luck involved. There was no luck involved. You outran him today, Morris.
Yeah, I tell you, Dave Butner and Bruce Eden, Kurt Zimmerman, I just got such a fantastic crew.
They have a fantastic driver, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you.
Congratulations. It does indeed mean a lot.
You bet. These type of wins for these kind of guys, these first wins, they're really very emotional. This is Mark Oswald being pulled to the line for his final round with Don Perdome. We'll be back.
No time today. The funny cars pound the ground here at Sanair International Drag Strip, the only NHRA Winston Series tour event out of the United States. Don the Snake Perdome will be in the near lane, Mark Oswald in the far lane. But first, let's go to Don Garlits for his pick among the top fuel finalists.
In the top fuel final, you'll notice there's no fuelers behind me. That's because they're still back there thrashing, trying to make it. They're both working on these cars real hard. Gene Snow and Dick LaHaye. Dick LaHaye ran a 5:26 in the last round, and Gene Snow ran a 5:17. That is a big difference in top fuel, believe me. So because of that, Gene's going to have lane choice, and I think he's going to win the race without any question.
But as we've seen so many times, anything can happen with these highly volatile automobiles. Don Perdome knows that, and right now he's just hoping everything stays together. Oswald was your pick, Big Daddy. I'll give you a chance to get out of that.
I'm not getting out of it because Oswald has got his lane choice, and he's got Perdome in this lane over here. Even though Perdome likes this lane, it could be a little something wrong with it.
Well, he told me in that interview, you heard him, he was going to pop up his car just a bit. Let's see if it's enough. They move into stage. Both engines sounding great. Both cars appear ready and healthy for this final round. What a day it has been among the funny cars, and this should be a fitting conclusion. Oswald has problems about 200 feet out. Mike Clover, the crew chief for Don Perdome, is ecstatic. The first wins at the Gator Nationals well over a year ago for the Snake.
The Snake runs a fine 5:44 ET, best ET of the day, with a 260-mile-an-hour time. We noticed at the start, Oswald got a slight advantage at the starting line, but it didn't last long as he experienced some type of mechanical difficulty, and the Snake moved right out. Notice the big flames coming out of the headers. The Snake was ready for him. He was going to lay one down if he got the traction, and it sure looks like he got it. Don Perdome, your winner.
What this funny car sport needs is parity. 7 races, 7 winners, and today, Don the Snake Perdome.
It's awfully nice. Awfully nice, Steve. You know, we've struggled to get here, and if it wasn't for Skoll and Pontiac, I don't think we'd make it.
The race itself, as far as your car was concerned, he broke early.
Yeah, my car was breaking up the last round, and the last couple of rounds it wasn't really swift, but we're just trying to do the best we could do. You know, with these things, it can go either way. We ran decent today, though. I don't feel like we backed into it.
Well, I've got some more good news for you. 5:44.
Oh, that's pretty good. I thought it was breaking up a little bit. Shows you what I know. Yeah, it was, you know, I'm just happy that the car performed well, and the crew worked real hard on it. My crew's just the greatest in the world.
Could you have ever imagined, would anybody have imagined that 7 races and 7 winners?
No, it's amazing, you know, and that's what I like about funny car racing these days and what NHRA's doing. They're all close together. There's not one guy running away with it. I think it's a lot like NASCAR. If they can just keep it running that way and keep the competition close together, it's going to be fantastic.
And keep competitors like yourself. Again, good work.
Thank you. It's nice being here.
And there's a crew that contributed so greatly to this win.
Well, no one can deny that the snake is back, and I'm afraid the competitors are going to have to reckon with him. Here's Kim LaHaye on the starting line, backing her dad up, getting them into those tracks, those ever-important burnout marks that give you that traction that you so sorely need.
All right, now I gave you the chance to get out of your Oswald prediction, and you didn't. Now, you picked that man, Gene Snow. What do you think now?
I'm going to stay with Gene Snow. I like that high gear setup.
On this racetrack, indeed, it remains to be seen what that combination will do under different circumstances as the series continues towards its conclusion some 9 races from now. Dick LaHaye in the near lane. He's not at all afraid of that lane. He'll give it all the power he can. They are just seconds away from the start of the final race of the NHRA Lake Grand National. Snow with the wheels in the air. LaHaye right with him. Oh, it is Gene Snow. Just a magnificent show of power. Up line 19, 273 miles per hour. Defeats LaHaye's 523, who made it look even closer than it was with a bit of an advantage right here, Don.
LaHaye gets a starting line advantage and moves right out on Snow, and it looks like the race is over. But the high gear car begins to make a move about half track. You can see a little puff of smoke come off the tires, and he starts to move and just eases out in front of LaHaye to win by a wheel. Gene Snow.
I'll tell you, Gene Snow is so excited he just stopped right in the middle of the racetrack. But you know what? That's okay, because there's no more cars to come. You are the top fuel champion.
I don't know what to say. It's been one heck of a weekend. The reason we're on the track is there's a little headwind and both chutes stopped real fast. But it was excellent. We smoked the tires a little bit in the middle, and he was about a car length, and all of a sudden we started pulling. I said, just a little more racetrack, and it got around him right at the end. I'm really pleased. What did we run, Steve?
519.
519, I'll take it.
Indeed, you should. You know, this car, there's no transmission to shift. The clutch stages are all on timers. You can enjoy the ride, is what I'm getting at.
Sure, we ought to have a sidecar. You could go with us. I would like to thank my crew. They did one hell of a job. We had a hell of a problem. They were making that semifinal. We made it. We ran good. Eddie Hill and then waited on us. We gave everybody a good race. I'm just very happy to be here and thank everybody. Amalie Champion, all my sponsors. Thank you, guys.
Gene Snow. Congratulations to all our champions today. For all of us here at Sanair, thanks for joining us.
The executive producer for American Sports Cavalcade is Harvey M. Palish. Produced and directed by John B. Mullen. Promotional consideration provided for and a fee paid by the Style Auto World Championship Team, the nation's premier source of fast lane fashions. Style Auto, the champion's choice for the style of your life. The American Sports Cavalcade is a presentation of Diamond V Sports.